Hi there and welcome back to the channel. Today, Native Instruments, the Maverick. Let's get into this. Here's the instrument, double click on it, and it's up. This is a pretty lean instrument. I've already done an episode on the Grandeur, which is my second favorite grand piano. This one, it's down the list a lot further, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere down there. Interestingly, it has the exact same interface as the Grandeur, and it has pretty much the same specs. Over 2,500 samples, 9 release samples for each key, 18 velocity zones, even though when I look under the hood, I only see 8 velocity layers, so maybe they're doing something with scripting. 14 gigabytes of samples, 6.5 gigabytes of samples when they're compressed. This is a good sounding piano. It's well recorded, it's easy to use, it has just enough controls not to overwhelm a user, but to give you enough tone control, enough control over the anatomy of the piano to make it sound the way you want and respond to your controller. And it also has a convolution reverb. Let's get into it. I'm going to go through this piano a lot faster than I did with the Maverick because I explained a lot of those controls and how piano is affected by them. And if you want to know that information, you can always watch that other episode. Tone control. If we control click, it's going to take the controls back to their default value. So here's how the tone control affects the sound. Of course, that's going to soften up the sound of the piano and the brightness. Let's get into the details. All of these controls are controllable with CC. You can just right-click on them and assign them to a control. This is also true of this button right here that turns the equalizer on and off. I like the fact that it has an on-off button because this way you can set up the equalizer, then turn it off and do an A-B comparison to the sound prior to the equalizer. That's a nice feature. Let's hear how the equalizer affects the sound. That's a good range. That's also a good range. I can hear the boost more than I can hear the cut on this particular control, but it sounds fine. Here we have a tonal depth control. We can have a natural sound. We can have a more resonant sound. You can definitely hear the ring of the strings. It's like there's reverb being added to the sound. And right now I want to leave the reverb off so you can hear the piano without any coloring, or just the coloring of these tonal controls. Transients. This can make the sound of the piano more aggressive or less aggressive. So with a heavy, fast attack, that tone is going to hit you pretty quickly. A more sustained sound. To some people that might sound more palatable because we don't have any reverb right now, and that kind of gives you that reverb effect. Low keys, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This just allows you to skew the sound performance of your lower keys. Last but not least, we have our compressor. We need to turn it on, and you can select any one of the presets in here. Some of them have a hard knee, some of them are a little smoother like this one. But you're not going to hear anything until you turn it on. So at 0 amount of compression, you're not getting any compression. And at 100%, it's really hammering the sound with compression. That's it for our tone controls. Let's look at the anatomy. The dynamic range control here is going to work a lot like compression. With no dynamic range, it doesn't matter really how hard I play. I'm going to get a pretty loud sound. When I turn the dynamic control as far as it will go to the right, I'm going to be able to play very softly, having a full range of dynamic control. The downside is I really have to hammer my controller to get those louder sounds. Resonances. Resonances work in conjunction with the pedal. When I press the pedal, the damper is pulled away from the strings, and any notes that I play send sound waves that cause the other strings that I'm not playing to vibrate. This is called sympathetic vibration. Let's go ahead and give you a demo of this. The best way for you to hear it is for me to play a chord, press the pedal, and then rotate the knob. Let's get into the details. First of all, we have overtones. When I was reviewing the Grandeur, I commented that I couldn't hear a lot of difference with the overtones turned full up or full down. It didn't seem to make a lot of difference. Here, I can hear a subtle change. Though today I'm not hearing it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Next up, stereo image. definitely something we can hear. In the center position, that's the way the sound was recorded. So with the stereo image, when I'm playing lower notes, they're going to have a bias to the left speaker. When I'm playing higher notes, they're going to have a bias to the right speaker. And notes in the middle register are going to appear in the center. If I take it all the way down to the left, it's going to be a mono image. If I take it all the way to the right, it's going to be an overemphasized stereo image. And I actually like this sound. The swap option here just allows me to switch the channels, the left and the right channels. Next up, we have our keys. And the first portion here allows us to set up the velocity response. I personally like it linear, but if you have a heavier or lighter playing style, you may wish to choose one of the other options here. With the softest velocity here, this is one extreme, even medium velocities will produce softer notes. When I go to the other range of the spectrum, now even medium velocities will produce relatively loud volumes. Silent key is a very interesting option here. All that silent key does is if you press a key very softly, it's not going to sound. Let me see if I can press a whole bunch of keys on the keyboard very softly, and you'll notice that there's no sound. The purpose of this option is so that if you accidentally press a key very softly, it doesn't sound. Sometimes when you're using your pinky or your thumb and you're playing an octave, maybe you catch an adjacent note and you press it very softly. And this just will make that sound not play. Personally, I leave it off. Pedaling. We have repedaling and we have half pedaling. Repedaling just allows you to extend the release samples. Half pedaling allows you to move the dampers a lesser distance away from the strings than you normally would. This changes the release characteristics of the sound, and it can also soften the sound. I talked about it a little bit more in the other episode if you're interested. Release samples are very important, and I'm going to overemphasize all of the sounds in this area so that you can really hear them. What release samples do is when you release keys on a piano, they don't instantly become quiet. The damper does fall back or press back against the strings, but that takes a few milliseconds because it's a mechanical function. Next up, release samples, and I'm going to overemphasize some of these sounds in post-production so you can really hear them. Release samples are very important. When you play keys, the damper moves away from the string so that the sound can ring out, the string can resonate freely. When you let go of the keys or when you let go of the pedal, the damper falls back on the strings. But that's a mechanical action and it takes a few milliseconds. Also, when the damper touches the strings, they don't stop resonating instantly. It's a slower process than we might think, maybe 10, 15, 20 milliseconds. It makes a difference. And these release samples approximate that process and that mechanical action of the piano. Let me play the sounds with the release samples and then play it without, and you'll be able to hear it. You can see how dead those keys are, and that's not natural for a real piano. On the other hand, 0 dB is way too loud for these release samples. The default is -6. Personally, I like it somewhere around about -11, somewhere between -12 and -8. Let's talk about the noises. These are not a gimmick, but what I would say about them is, from a recording standpoint of view, and I'm a person that's really a studio person these days, composing and recording in my studio, I don't want these sounds on. They're just more clutter in my mix, and it's hard enough to mix a song without having additional clutter in there. These noises approximate the mechanical sounds of a real piano. So the hammer is just the hammer's moving towards the string and then falling back. It's a clunky sound, so in the lower register, it gets masked by the sound itself. In the middle register, you might be able to hear it a little bit. And in the upper register, you hear it quite a bit. Next up, the damper. This is just the physical action of the damper moving away from the strings. So when I press the pedal, you'll be able to hear this. In a way, it sounds like the piano breathing. Next, we have the pedal, and this is just the pedals on the floor when you press them, the mechanical sound. As I said in the other episodes, a good piano has felt or some kind of dampening material around the pedal to minimize the sound of the pedal being used. But this does wear out over time, so if you have an older piano and the sound is bugging you, it may be time to replace that felt. Next up, we have the string sound. What this is when the damper is resting against the strings. Over time, it takes on a little bit of the shape of the string. So it kind of forms around the string. And it can be 1, 2, or 3 strings on some pianos. I've never seen a piano with more than 3 strings per note, but there may be pianos like that I've never seen. But that causes kind of little teeth on the dampers for each note. And as the damper is raised, those teeth kind of have a frictional pull on the strings, and it sounds like this. If there's one sound I might leave on when I was playing solo, it might be the string sound. But the others I would definitely get rid of, and quite honestly, generally I leave them all off because they're just more clutter for the mix. Last but not least on this page, we have our basic pitch, and we have 440. We have our concert tuning here in the center, and we have a little bit of range. It's not huge. I like this feature. When I was a kid and used to play along with cassette tapes and vinyl, it always seemed that what I was playing along with on the real piano in our house was either a little flat or a little sharp. And this would have been a nice feature to have. Stretch tuning and equal tuning, I'm not going to get into it, but stretch tuning is how this piano was sampled, so that's going to give you the most natural response. You can try equal tuning. It's not going to make a heck of a lot of difference. Let's go on to our space. And for our space, we have just a few controls here. Down at the bottom, we have our space, and we can click on that, and we can choose from a variety of different convolution reverb spaces. So these are supposed to be real spaces. Then we have three controls up here. A mount, and you can think of that as a send control. So we've got to turn it on first. Then we have a size for our space. And then we have our distance from the listener. So the distance of our piano to the listener. You can think of this as pre-delay. And this is a good sounding reverb. I've heard all these reverbs and they all sound pretty good. In the last episode, I made some other sounds. I made a house piano sound and I made a cinematic sound. Just for fun here, we'll make a cinematic sound. I think that'll be more than enough, and you can watch the other episode to see me make other sounds. But for a cinematic sound, I used a cathedral space because you need a big space for a cinematic piano sound. To me, a cinematic piano sound is just a ton of reverb and a very soft sound. So we'll soften up our sound here. And we already have the lid closed. To me, that's as good as any cinematic sound I've heard, and I'm just doing this very quickly, and obviously you could take some time to do it. The beauty of the space that you have here, these convolution reverbs, is if you were playing live using this piano on a laptop for a gig and having a real piano sound, which is something I would have loved back in the 80s when I was playing, this would be a great instrument. You could use the space that is included with it, this set of convolution reverbs, and I think you'd be just fine. In the studio, you could just turn it off and use a plugin that you have, whatever plugin you really like for reverb or however you want to affect this sound. You could put some tremolo on it. You could detune it with some chorusing and some interesting plugins that are made by different manufacturers, and you can have a lot of fun. You can make yourself a saloon piano by doing that. I like the piano. It's fine. The tone is not exactly what I really like. It's not in my top 5 or even in my top 10. The grandeur is, but we're all different people, and piano is very personal to us. Just like the grandeur, this is priced at $99. That's full retail. It does go on sale from time to time for $49.50, which is half price. And I think at that price, it would definitely be a good value for people looking for a piano with this tone, if this tone strikes you as being a good tone. If I lift up the lid here, put it a little bit brighter, put it back to the concert hole 1, which is a sound that I actually like a lot. There's something about its tone that doesn't work for me. It just doesn't have enough body to it. And maybe if I played around with it a little bit more, I would get there. I have it as part of Native Instruments' complete collection. I haven't used it other than to make this particular episode. I tend to move towards the grandeur, but it's a well-recorded, good-sounding piano. Thank you for your time. Take care, and I'll be back in another episode soon.